been very impatient, and I detect that with you today. And it isn't about you personally, it's about this monumental task that we're faced. And I applaud your effort, just as I do Congressman Polis and Senator Udall. We need all the help we can get. The problem with that is we needed it.
Look,
Long
we are where we are.
But it is moving. We've had 106 claims, I think, settled since the first of the year. Their pace before,
Hallelujah.
Their pace before was about 15 a month out of the Denver office, give or take. So there is a little bit of improvement. But when you're looking at 8,500 claims hanging in abeyance, potentially, you know, this thing, and there are 360 coming in, so this thing is still not the parity.
And I'm with you. So I need help. In changing the burden to the 22 cancers, which if I look at this are still pretty expansive in the cancers and how they're described. Okay, and I'm not a doctor. I don't know, you know, bone cancer from, well I do. I know bone is different than renal cancer is different than leukemia. I mean, I know that, but this looks like a pretty expansive list to me. But what I need is, and Jeremy Rodriguez in my office, and you know, you've got experts here. You've all become experts, but I think we've changed the process to the benefit of the people who worked at Rocky Flats.
It's better than it was.
And we've got to keep pushing it, and I want to help you push it. I want to see people get their just compensation. You know, there may be a fight over whether you were making $7 an hour or $17 an hour, and I can't help you there.
Or do we have to study it? I had to go to medical to
I
find
got
out about what's
you.
wrong
No,
with
I mean,
him.
this thing is so complicated. You got to become a doctor,
Correct.
a chemist,
Correct.
a scientist, a lawyer. You know, I mean, you guys through this process have had to go through everything. And every time, honestly, I don't want to sound ignorant, but when I start wading into this, it is so complicated, and I get so lost in the acronyms. It's hard, and you know, and I'm a lawyer. I'm trained to do this stuff.
I'm not a rocket scientist.
So I
I
have had assistance from the Rocky Flats Workers Coalition, or whatever you guys call yourselves. And we thought we made progress. Udall and Polis and I thought we made progress with the Department of Labor, with the Department of Health, with the Energy Department
But
to
they
move
know
the
how to
burden.
work you guys. All they have to do is give their little penny and then run away with the
All
hundreds
right,
of
I got
thousands
you
of
on
dollars.
that. I got you on that. And we've got to just stay on it.
I understand, but I want to reiterate, I personally want to thank you for your effort. All I want to do
Yeah, I'm not, Jerry, I don't want a pat on the back. I want to get this solved.
No, I'm going to work on the other part of your back, and then I want to prod you. We need more. We need more, and we need it.
You needed it 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Absolutely, but any improvement is something that we didn't have before. So again, I thank you for your effort, and Stuart, thank.
Truly,
Eric.
what's happening
Excuse
is
me,
what
there's a lady who's
Thank
been waiting
Yeah, all
very
right, I'm
patiently.
going to shut up and listen again.
I filed in February, and then I got...
Of this year?
Of this year, and the beginning of March, I got paperwork from Nevada. And all this paperwork from Nevada, every other paragraph is the burden of proof is on the employee. Now, if the burden of proof
Has
isn't
switched.
supposed, but why in the last,
I'd like to see your papers, please.
The letters from the
Can we
Department
see?
of Labor still say that it's in
Okay,
the
we've got to,
boilerplate.
then that needs to be modified because Rocky Flats has taken on a whole different complexion, if you will.
I can fax them to you, I live in Pueblo West.
Do we have a card for her right now
So,
before it's away?
Jeremy Rodriguez has a card, I always get a free card. And Stuart, I know, would like to help you too.
Who else
So, I
would
mean,
like one of Jeremy's cards? Right here.
I also like to remind you guys that when it says a neoplasm or tumor of unspecified behavior, and it's in the lung, or it's in the lymph nodes, or it's in one of those areas, everything, that is a cancer underneath this program. Also, secondary cancers are accepted as a 22 cancer, such as you may have prostate cancer, it's metastasized to the bone, then it's accepted.
But you gotta
The
meet
bone
the
cancer.
50%.
No,
Yeah.
not if it's underneath the sac. Prostate would have to, but if it's already gone to a secondary area that is one of those 22 cancers, then it's a set cancer.
Well, I have a friend that I worked with, John Wayne Barton. It doesn't matter, I give his name out. He got colon cancer here the last couple of years. They told him to go screw himself, he wasn't 50%.
No,
Colon is coming.
That's
it's
BS.
covered.
He is covered now because
He needs to
has-
refile for the SEC. He's covered underneath the SEC. He's worked before 1983,
Yes.
250 days.
25 years.
The 250 days also is only an 8-hour shift. So if you work overtime, that is 2 days.
There's something that needs to be added to that. Everyone that has a claim in process, they need to receive that letter from NIOSH that their claim is being reconsidered with this new set of parameters.
Right,
Don't
no.
wait for
That's the way
that.
they-
I would not wait for
That's
that.
what they posted on their website. You have to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
this
but
letter.
no, I would not wait for that. Because what it is, as soon as that SEC was passed and was put in the Federal Registry, then you go to that district office and say, I'm SEC, work on my claim.
I guess what I'm saying is if the people haven't received the letter, they better start checking as to why not.
How many people here know someone who has not received a letter about the cancer that was denied previously and now qualified for an SEC?
No.
So you worked before
No.
1984?
I was there 33 years, but John Wayne Barton was there 25 years. He's down at Albuquerque now.
Okay,
And as of just a couple weeks ago, he's been denied.
Okay, let's just explain what happened. When a new SEC is approved, the Department of Labor will re-review all of the previously denied claims. So first of all, there has to be a previously denied claim. And they will review that claim to determine if you are eligible for the SEC. You only receive a letter if they determine that you are now eligible for the SEC. If you have not received a letter, there is a chance that they determine you are not eligible. And at that point, so if you have not received a letter, you may want to contact the Department of Labor to get the status on the review of your claim.
I have a question about multiple cancers. I think their formula for when you have multiple cancer is flawed.
Correct.
They do not take it as 100%, like you have bone cancer, leukemia, lung cancer. And how do they know when it's a primary or a secondary or if it's a metastasis? They
Should be the
always leave
memory.
the burden on the.
Yes, underneath the 42 CFR 81, all cancers are required to go to NIOSH. If they're not a SEC, all cancers. NIOSH, in their guidelines, are supposed to develop a method that's on the 42 CFR 82. Okay, that's where their methods are. Then they have guidelines that go with that. The guidelines, if you look at your end product when you have multiple cancers, they did not include all your external dose. They did not include your occupational medical dose. They did not include your internal dose to the date of diagnosis, and they definitely did not include your environmental dose. So if you are not an SEC cancer, these are the 4 that's supposed to be done every year that you worked there for each of those cancers individually. Then they run the program of the probability of causation. Then if you're over the 50% into the 99th percentile, you meet it. But they're supposed to, but if you look at your dose reconstruction itself, they'll say, this is what we gave you the first time. Well, guess what? We're reducing it this time. And why? They didn't receive any more information.
Exactly.
That's what I have been fighting with NIOSH for constantly.
That's wrong. That whole formula.
And I
is
have
wrong.
been addressing, and Denise Brock is trying to help me with this, is that in the statute itself and also in the regulations, it states that we can request a review. You can request a review of the dose reconstruction. That's not a rework, that's a review. That dose reconstruction then goes back to NIOSH. NIOSH has an independent party that had nothing to do with your dose reconstruction. Look at it to make sure that the methods and the guidelines were followed correctly. We're not allowed to do that. You're being denied due process is what exactly happened.
And another thing, if you're how do they know if your cancer was caused from the radiation or the chemicals? There's no,
There's no synergistic, there's no
it's a
synergistic
synergistic effect.
And
The
also,
tools-
also in
They don't
20
say that.
CFR 30, they talk about that, and they say because it's your radiation and toxic substances. If your radiation doesn't prove it alone, that's fine. Radiation and toxic substances. That's in the regulations.
But how does it,
But when it goes back to DOL under Part E, they will not consider radiation.
Even though ionizing radiation is in the 12th report of carcinogens.
Right, and then too, you're caught up with another catch-22 in the SEC. If you have a skin cancer and you worked before 1983, you get your claim. But
No,
if you have
no.
kidney cancer, liver cancer,
No,
bladder cancer,
let's
prostate
clarify.
cancer, and skin cancer, and you can't prove your radiation, your claim's denied.
let's
No,
clarify.
let's reverse that,
Let's
okay?
clarify.
Your liver, that's a SEC cancer.
She's talking about a POC. She's
Oh,
not
probability of
she's not
causation?
83.
Okay.
Okay, but let's take a step back, because what we're seeing with all of the completed SECs when the skin cancers go for a dose reconstruction, because they're not one of the 22 cancers. They are considered radiogenic, but they're not one of the accepted cancers, another debacle we deal with. When they actually go through and do the dose reconstruction, what we're finding under the Hanford SECs, because they said we can't calculate a dose for this period, when that person puts in for their skin cancer and they're in that period of time, they only get a partial dose reconstruction. And the partial dose reconstruction very, very, very seldom ever comes back with a 50% probability of causation, because they go back and say, well, this is an SEC site and we can't calculate that dose, therefore we can't assign it a dose under a non-SEC cancer, so they aren't going to get approved because it's not an SEC cancer.
But in the beginning of the program, okay, in 2001, 2002, when they first started doing it, when a cancer was accepted, all those cancers were then also accepted. Now they're coming back and trying to get you to either take them off or whatever. But if one cancer meets the 50%, all your cancers meet the 50%.
Well, they change the rules in the midstream. They make a rule, and then when you reach that criteria, they change it.
Right.
And that's wrong.
See, and
That's
that's,
so wrong.
people are sick and they're trying to navigate their way through this process, which is an unbelievably difficult
and
process.
the NIOSH people
And-
have,
all right,
it's
so
impossible
this-
to say this guy got it because this guy over here got it. We don't know where they were in the building, but somebody didn't get it, so nobody got it.
All right, this is what I'd like to do, because I have to go to another meeting. And I think I speak for Jared Polis and Mark Udall when I do this, and I know you wanted to visit for a second, so I'll meet with you after this. But you've got experts, and you keep running into roadblocks. What I would offer up for our office, so I represent everything south of here, okay? I represent Rocky Flats now. Jared used to represent Rocky Flats. Mark's always represented Rocky Flats at the time that he's been in office. So what I'd like to know is over the next 30, 60 days, as people either get their letters, don't get their letters, should have had a re-review because of this change in status of Rocky Flats. That's what's occurred. There's been a change in status of Rocky Flats. If things don't start going more smoothly, then we're going to get involved. We will be working with you, and Jeremy, you may be working on Rocky Flats for the rest of your life.
Welcome to the club.
Because this is complicated. These people have been harmed. They were serving the nation. I mean, if I had it to do over, I wasn't around when this whole thing was created. I mean, we should have created something like a VA system.
Correct.
So that people just have, period, if they worked there 250 days, didn't matter whenever, they're part of the VA system. That would have been the smartest way to go about all of this.
And that was the intent.
But it's gotten much harder, and I think each of these agencies is protecting their budgets, and who knows what's going on. We want to help, okay? We thought we were helping by changing the burden, by changing the status of Rocky Flats, and I think that will move some of these claims from limbo or denied to approved. Then there's still always the fight of how much is the compensation and all of that, and that's another very difficult question. sort of beyond where I am in these things today. I just want to move from, you're out in limbo and out in nowhere and just keep giving documents and that are never good enough.
Not even their
Yeah.
own, not even
To
their own
over here.
stuff.
So we want to play a role in that. I know Jared's office and Stuart's here wants to play a role in that. Help the experts. We're going to continue to seek this advisory board through the White House. I don't think we're going to get any legislation through. We've been in a stalemate in the Congress for 3 years now on a lot of different things. But I think we're going to push on the White House to have an advisory board trying to, make sure that the Department of Labor or NIOSH or Energy, just don't keep playing games.
You know what scares me, Congressman? A lot of my friends, Congressman, are catching cancer 2 and 3 and 4 times. My cancer doctor told me with my radiation readings, my internal
You're lucky
dose,
you're alive.
I'm gonna probably get it again.
Well, and you're lucky, let me just tell you, based on the numbers that you've said
I was
today,
lucky.
you're lucky you're alive.
Now, I have an angel on my shoulder.
Yeah.
But my friends are getting 2 and 3 and 4 times. That's scary. And they're fighting the Department of Labor on every
No,
damn
look,
cancer. It's
this
sickening.
has been a terrible process. For some people, it's worked a little bit, for most people, it's not worked at all.
I just want my card.
The
So-
companies, men are now working in the government. They are in the
All
government.
right, I got it. We'll do what we can to help. We work sort of on the big level, the macro level of moving the burden, okay? Now, we want to help on some individual cases with the folks up here, all right? And see what we can do. And we'll do our best.
Well, Congressman, as a lawyer, your history as a lawyer, would a class action suit do any good at all? Or because of the indemnity, is that an impossibility?
Well, if you brought a class action against Rockwell, and it's probably every statute of limitations has expired by now, but it may, then Rockwell's going to look to an indemnity to the United States. The United States would have to, there'd have to be some kind of lawsuit between Rockwell and the United States. I think it's just probably a circle, but you could, you're asking me that on kind of cold. I'm not a class action lawyer,
Well,
but,
there are some in this
and they
magazine.
may be willing to pursue something like
But
that.
most of them, when they discover it's the government right away, they're not.
They're afraid.
They're afraid.
No,
And
You wanna
so
know
this
why?
is our only.
My lawyer got paid $500,000 to drop me on an argument that I actually won myself with the company.
We have a,
So a class action is.
So, any more questions for me?
we have a hand in
I was diagnosed.
Thank you.
Excuse
What'd you say, sir?
Excuse me,
Yeah, go ahead.
excuse me, Amanda and Matt's been waiting very patiently. That's you.
Yeah, what did you say?
I was diagnosed with chronic beryllium disease in 1990. Okay, I went through a whole bunch of rigmarole thereof. We filed a lawsuit, myself and two other people, and we pretty much got the ball rolling. But hey,
How long ago did you file the lawsuit? Is it over? Was
oh
it-
yes, it's over. We have to get it over before we can get Part B.
Right.
We pretty much over.
Yeah, it was one or the other. Sort of one or the other. Get rid of the lawsuit if you want to get some coverage.
Yeah, the Part B. When it first came out, matter of fact, I have documentation for it. I mean, I went through a lot of stuff, so I have your numbers. I like to see that this is not very right, all the stuff to myself and to other people. Back in the early 90s, and Mr. Ziegler, he could testify, tell you, stuff that we do.
A couple things before this breaks up on the
It's
subject.
not going to
It's
break
not-
up.
he
I'm
just
just
has to
leaving.
go.
I'm just leaving. I mean, if that's going to cause the party to be over, I'm sorry.
On the subject of lawsuits, as you may know, in this state, an employee cannot sue his employer. And so some of the people that worked with beryllium tried to sue Brush Wellman, the sole source provider. The other thing is but it was thrown out of district court here, I was subpoenaed on. The other thing that I want to remind you of is the Maryland Cook case. It took 15 years. She was a horse farmer there on Indiana.
Yeah.
15 years for it to go through federal court. And then a three-panel judge appellate process denied it. 15 years, and the government supposedly spent $30 million preparing for that case. So you gotta know that to talk about it here is one thing, but to find the talent and the money and the patience is a whole different.
So my goal is to still try to work within this statute and within the regs, and it's a complicated thing. Hopefully, we've simplified it a little bit about if you were at Rocky Flats and you've got one of the 22 cancers, which looks, you know, and I now, you know, I never went to med school, so I don't know 100 cancers. But we want to help you get those claims approved. And Jeremy's going to, I'm going to put him on it full time if that's how many requests we get. And we want to work with this group, and we want to work with Mark and Jared to get an advisory board put into place. I mean, advisory boards are great, they can kind of push, but ultimately we've got to get the DOL and NIOSH to do their jobs that we've asked them to do.
Can I include the sick nuclear workers group instead of just paid advocates or non-paid advocates?
So look, whoever you use is fine.
I'd like to see a combination.
Actually,
This is
I-
only a volunteer board, and I am not going to be on the board that will be put together by the president.
No, I'm not talking about
So
you,
it won't be
Stephanie, I'm talking about Jeff
any
Laura.
paid advocates. But the most
Yeah,
important
you're
thing
there,
for
so you can work in
efficiency,
our homes, even though I don't really want it. You want that out of me, but you don't want to help my husband at all.
I know, I've been
Okay.
told I
I am an
keep
injured
quiet and
nuclear
don't have a big mouth or tell people
I
what they
know
should
you
do.
are, but I'd
Okay,
like
the
to see if
legislation,
Lindy
excuse me,
or
the
Laura,
legislation
Jeff
before
Schultz, and
Congress.
yourselves.
Okay, sir, the legislation that Congress introduced for the Presidential Advisory Board would include workers and worker advocates and attorneys and toxicologists, what else is on
Industrial
there?
hygienists.
Industrial hygienists.
We got doctors. we got
Doctors,
the whole
yeah,
pitch.
it's covered. The workers are definitely represented, or will be represented with this board.
And we also
And we have
have,
workers here,
we also
basic
have,
worker.
we also have a special advisory team that's with this board that we refer to, everything, and these are your industrial hygienists, these are your occupational environmental doctors. Occupational doctors are not necessarily environmental doctors. So we have people working with special advisors that are on higher up that we could call on.
Well, to point something out, we have an advisory panel currently that has 3 or 4 fellow steel workers, amazingly. Every time it's come up for a vote, previous to this last episode, many of them recused themselves. So we wound up where we were barefoot and naked, no matter how you sliced and diced it. So you gotta know, to impanel a new group, and to have it where they have no teeth, to me, is a question of what happened. I wanna see if there is this new committee formed, where it's got some muscle. Otherwise, all we're gonna do is have more and more meetings and more, these controversies develop, and that doesn't solve any of these workers' claims and their troubled lives.
See, unlike, DIAB has already issued one report that we did a review of the site exposure matrix and found quite an important deficiencies there. We did send that to Congress, to the President, and to the Department of Labor. As a volunteer citizens board, we don't have the teeth. We cannot make DOL say, oh, yeah, you're right, we need to fix this. The Presidential Advisory Board will have that authority, correct?
Hopefully.
Okay. I want to make
Yeah,
sure.
we want it to have teeth, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but part of the problem is, it needs to be in legislation, and in legislation, we haven't, there's been a stalemate in the Congress on every subject, not just this one,
Yes.
but every subject. So, the president is trying to come up with some idea of how he can do it by executive order and not by legislation. It doesn't have the clout that I think it would have if we were able to amend this statute.
Correct.
But, you know, we gotta keep moving because I don't want these departments, historically, I think they've been playing games because they're, you know, who knows why? Either for fear of some kind of major liability or who knows what.
How about job retention?
Or maybe job, you know, maybe they're trying to keep their job.
That's
I don't know.
exactly it.
I don't know. But let's see what happens with this change in the burden of proof. And if you or John Barton or whatever the guy's name was you were talking about, if you guys are not finding anything's changed by the burden of proof being switched, then I gotta know it. Okay? All right, and I thank you all for your service to the nation, and I thank you for letting me speak at this thing, and, you know, we'll try to get this right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Okay, we're not going to break up completely.
You know, ma'am, when
Well,
this
we'd like
first
to-
started, this started day one when the $92 million, Mr. Nelson, was appropriated for this program. And money was misdirected to other things than this program. And Congress was supposed to have had an investigation of what happened to the $92 million, and they never did. And we never got accountability of all the money that was misappropriated of that $92 million. I mean, this isn't a new thing. This is since day one.
I can't speak to that issue. What we're going to do right now is take a 10-minute administrative break, and then all of you would like to come back, we can continue to discuss your issues. If you have any further questions, if you have records that we can take and use in our study, we appreciate it. 10 minutes.